Hello po! Welcome back to my vlog. My name is RG10 and ang aking channel pala po ay Bisaya Couple TV. So, please subscribe and ang tatalakayin ko po ngayon ay tungkol po sa lugar ng aking tinatrabahoan ngayon. Walang iba kundi ang Chicago, Illinois. So, alam nyo guys, marami dito ang magaganda ding mga lugar at mga tourist spot. So, kung gusto nyo po na makita yung mga magagandang lugar dito sa Chicago, stay tuned lang po kayo at just follow my channel kay ibabahagi ko lahat doon ang mga magagandang lugar dito sa Chicago, Illinois. Pero bago po yun, ay atin mo nang tuklasin kung ano po ang history of Chicago. Ano po ba ang bago ako nakapunta dito, yung presence lang kasi yung nakita ko. Ano ba talaga yung kasaysayan ng Chicago, Illinois? So, ate pong tuklasin at magbi-video react po ako about sa history po ng Chicago, Illinois. Samahan niyo po ako.
Chicago. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce stuff. My name is Ebenezer. Oh, let's get to it. The area of today's Chicago is inhabited by the Algonquin people of Miami and Muscotan tribes. The name Chicago came from the French explorers' interpretation of a Miami, Illinois word Chicacua or Chicacua, meaning wild garlic, which according to the French...
Yan guys, pinakita po dito na meron pong Indian. Ang sa aking pagkakaalam po, ang sinaunang tao po na nakatira po dito sa lugar po ng Chicago ay mga Indian. So, sila po ang ating mga sinaunang ancestor po dito. At hindi ko lang siguro alam kung sinakop ba o hindi ko alam kasi baka ma-deport ako dito. Basta ang pagkakaalam ko lang, sila yung mga sinaunang tao po, yung mga Indian. Tinatawag nga sila ito na Indian American po. So, yan po. So, hanggang ngayon, ito po yung latest. Marami na pong mga tao na or other nationality na nakapunta na po dito sa Chicago, Illinois. Yan po. Patuloy po tayo.
French explorers grew in an abundance on the south end of Lake Michigan. The Chicago Portage, which forms a water connection from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi River system, attracted the attention of many French traders who brought the beaver trade to the Chicago area, effectively making it a strategically important area of the 17th century Beaver Wars. After the Beaver Wars, most of the Algonquin tribes were driven out of the area by the Iroquois, which in turn left the area after the Non-Fun Treaty in the 1920s. During this time, other tribes like Ojibwes and Potawatomis tried to settle the area, but there are no signs of any permanent settlements by them. The French also tried to colonize the area, but eventually they were driven out by the Native American raids during the Fox Wars. First Old World settler in Chicago.
Sabi nga yan, no, yung mga Native Americans daw. So, yun pong yung mga Indian po. So, siguro tama ako po. Sige, patuloy po natin.
Chicago was Jean-Baptiste Poindexter, who built a farm at the mouth of the Chicago River by the year 1788. In 1795, after the Northwest Indian War, USA finally gained more authority over the area, and to assert its claim built the Fort Dearborn on the Chicago River. Sadly, the fort was destroyed in the War of 1812, and many of the inhabitants were killed or taken prisoner by the Native American tribes. However, after the war, the Fort Dearborn was rebuilt in 1818 to again assert the US claim over the area and deter any raids by the Native Americans. In the year 1829, the area of today's Chicago had fewer than 100 inhabitants, most of which were soldiers serving in the Fort Dearborn, but interestingly enough, there was one legal tavern in the area at the time owned by Archibald Caldwell, who was most certainly the first landlord with a tavern in Chicago. A year later, 4th of August 1830, the Plat of Chicago was charted, and this is seen as the first official recognition of an area called Chicago. After its official recognition, many New England entrepreneurs started to pour money into the area area's development as they saw the potential of Chicago becoming a transportation hub. 3 years later, a town of Chicago was founded with a population of around 350 people, and in the next 7 years that number will increase by a whole 12 folds, during which Chicago is granted city status by the state of Illinois. Even though Chicago's population has started to increase, much of its wealth still came from farming. It wasn't until the 1848 opening of the Illinois-Michigan Canal which allowed shipping from the Great Lakes through Chicago to the
Yan po.
Mississippi.
Yan po, sabi niya doon po sa Michigan Canal. Noong nakabisit po kami ng aking misis doon po sa downtown Chicago po, mayroong mga portion po dito noon nandoon na titawag nilang Lake Michigan. Lake. So, kadalasan doon meron din pong mga bridges kasi po parang napagitnaan po yung lake po ng mga malalaking building po doon. Sa base po ng experience ko po nung nandun kami ng asawa ko doon po sa downtown Chicago. At unfortunately, nakaharap pa yung hotel na ami pong tinutulugan. Naalala ko pa yung tinutulugan namin, London Hotel. London Hotel. Nakakaano, no? London Hotel pero nasa Chicago. Kaya nakaharap po ang aming building doon po sa mga bridges. Then doon, sana mapakita ko sa inyo. Pero hindi pa kasi ako pwedeng mag-upload ng mahaba. Kagaya po ng video nito, kung gusto nyo po na makapanood po ng mga history, especially ito pong lugar namin sa Chicago, Illinois, ay pwede niyo pong i-google o pwede niyo po i-search sa YouTube. Nandun po mga malalaki po ang mga magiging maidulot ng inyong mga kaalaman. Kasi po, itong kinuha ko lang ay 7 minutes lang po. Nandun, mayroon ding iba mga 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Kaya po, hindi pwede pa sa akin kasi bago pa lang po ako na YouTuber po. So, yun po. Detalye ko lang po yung experience ko po nung nagpunta kami ng Chicago, Illinois. Makikita mo doon na may lake, tapos Michigan. Parang Chicago, Michigan, malapit lang. Yung ganun po. Sige, patuloy pa tayo.
River and the Gulf of Mexico, that Chicago started to grow as a trading hub. Later, this was reinforced by the 1850s construction of railroads, which helped solidify Chicago's claim as one of the most important trading hubs in the USA. Over 30 railway lines entered the city, with the main lines from east ending in Chicago and the main lines heading west beginning in Chicago. By the 1860s, the city became the nation's transshipment hub and warehousing center. With so many materials flowing through the city, it makes only sense that a large number of factories sprang up during the 1850s and 60s. With this sudden industrialization, the city also underwent a huge expansion in population, going from a little above 4,000 people in 1840 to 30,000 people in 1850 and 122,000 people in 1860. However, this sudden spike in population and industrialization
Grabe, no? Ganun na pala karami yung mga tao dito. Nadagdag ako. So, alam niyo na kung magano.
combined with the fact that Chicago was almost the same elevation as Lake Michigan, created a little or no naturally occurring drainage. Because of this, many travelers to Chicago reported it as the filthiest city in America. Plus, the standing water harbored pathogens and caused numerous epidemics. This forced the city to take the drainage problem seriously and started a huge project of putting down sewer pipes and then lifting parts of the city over them. In one instance, an entire acre of masonry rows of shops and offices were lifted 4 feet 8 inches over the course of 5 days. During this time, all of the businesses were still open. People came, went, shopped, and worked in them as if it was an ordinary day. This tremendous undertaking of putting down the sewer system and lifting of the city helped drastically with the outbreak of epidemics, and the city could once again function to its full capacity. Going into the 1870s, things seemed great. The city was booming with large factories being built to refine the huge portions of goods flowing through the city's trading hubs. Working in the vastly growing sector were a large large numbers of German and Irish immigrants looking for a better future. Unfortunately, in 1871, the Great Chicago Fire struck. No one knows how the fire started, but when it did, it spread like wildfire, consuming much of central Chicago, burning for 3 days straight. When it was finally contained, 1/3 of the city's 300,000 inhabitants were homeless and 300 of them were dead. Now with much of the city center in ruins, Chicago decided to pivot, replacing the former wooden structures with brick and masonry. At first, building these structures was a problem as the soft, swampy ground near the lake proved unstable for a tall masonry building. But the builders developed a new innovation of still framing the supports of a building, effectively creating the basis for the modern skyscraper. In fact, it was in Chicago that the first modern definition of a skyscraper was built in 1884. Sadly, the building was demolished in 1931, but similar buildings from that time period still stand in Chicago today. Now rebuilt from the Great Fire and going into the 20th century, Chicago got another major influx of immigrants, this time mostly Jewish and Western Slavic people, and also sizable numbers of Greek and Italians, putting the city's population well over 2 million people before World War I. After World War I, however, the migration slowed down and almost stopped, as new government immigration laws were passed, making it harder for Eastern Europeans to come into the country. During the Prohibition era, the city became a playing ground for mobsters that gained money and influence through the control of the city's illegal alcohol trade. However, the Roaring Twenties wouldn't last, and with the hit of the Great Depression, Chicago, just as any other city in USA, struggled to keep afloat. Nonetheless, thanks to the post-World War II economy boom, Chicago was back on track, expanding its trading hubs and industry. But with the lack of cheap labor from Europe due to immigration laws, Chicago gained a large influx of African American workers from the South, which in 1990s made up almost 40% of the city's population. Chicago today is part of the Rust Belt, with its industry shifting from unskilled physical labor to more skilled finance, marketing, computer, and database labor. This creates lots of new skilled jobs in the city, but also excludes the large population of unskilled workers, which are forced to leave the city to find jobs elsewhere. However, unlike other Rust Belt cities, Chicago has managed to make this transition quite successfully, even being named by GQ as the City of the Year in 2000.
Yan po. Hindi ko lang po itutuloy kasi po napakahabat po talaga ng mga history po ako as a new YouTuber po. Yung ano lang sa akin sa YouTube ay hanggang 15 minutes lang po kaya po pasensya po. So at least man lang naipakita ko sa inyo yung mga highlights po ng Chicago, Illinois, history po. At patuloy nyo po akong i-follow po at sundan sapagkat ipapakita ko rin po yung mga 10 things na inyo pong gustong puntahan dito po sa Chicago. Marami po kasi itong mga tourist spot. Isa na po doon yung Millennium Park at saka mayroon pa pong maraming iba. So keep watching my YouTube channel at para po detalye ko sa inyo lahat yung gaano kaganda ang lugar po ng Chicago, Illinois. By the way po, yung Chicago, Illinois po, tinatawag po dito ay isa po itong Windy City. Windy City po. So, naalala ko pa yung pagdating ko dito, summer yun summer, in July. Maginaw pa rin. Akala ko mayroong snow Sabi ni daddy ko, ng asawa ko, at saka ni mami, mag-snow daw, mag-start po ng December hanggang pong January, February, hanggang July daw, sabi nila. So how much more kung mag-snow pa? So kung yung mga taong gusto pumunta po dito sa Chicago, Illinois, magdala po kayo ng dobleng jacket talaga. Kahit hindi po na mag-snow ay napakalamig pa rin. Kahit summer, actually yung season po dito sa Chicago ay apat po. Tawag niyan ay 4 season. Ano yun? Summer, fall, winter, ano yung isa? Spring. Yun pala. So, guys, yan lang po ang aking i-details niyo sa history po ng Chicago, Illinois, the Windy City, yung tinatawag nila. At subscribe po kayo sa aking YouTube channel. Uli, ito po ang inyong lingkod, si RG Tan. My YouTube channel is Bisaya Couple TV. By the way, I'm Bisaya pala from Cebu. So, good afternoon guys. See you sa susunod po naking vlog. Salamat po.